Welcome to this episode of Vote Like a Texan. We're in Kendall County talking to JC Taylor, who is a candidate for Kendall County Commissioner in Precinct 2. So, JC, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Good morning, Justin. Glad to be here. My name is JC Taylor, and I'm running for Kendall County Commissioner, Precinct 2.
So, what inspired you to run for Commissioner in Precinct 2?
I'm a lifelong Kendall County resident. I've been here my whole life, grew up here. My dad grew up here, and I've just seen a lot of the change, some of it good, some of it bad, and I figured that I ought to get involved.
So, how did you get involved to begin with, and how do you get involved and run for County Commissioner? It seems like I don't know that I'd know where to start.
Right. Yeah. So it's the filing period opened. I don't remember when that opened, maybe in October of 25 or somewhere around that time. And then you go and you file to run, and you have to file a treasurer report first. And then you go over to the Republican Party. In my case, I'm Republican, and file with the Republican Party as well to be on the Republican primary ballot, which is really important. There's an important distinguishment there because in Kendall County, fortunately, we don't have Democrats running very often. And so what that means is that when voters go out and vote, to have a say really in local elections, they need to vote in the primary.
Well, that's a big part of our messaging right now to remind people that March 3rd is when this election happens. And in some of our races across the state, we're going to see March 3rd as the primary election. Then we're going to see runoffs in May, and then we're going to get to a general election in November. But since you don't have, or typically in Kendall County, we haven't seen a lot of Democratic opponents coming into the county commissioner race. So the race does really get decided on March 3rd. And I'll take the effort to say, I think February 17th, we start early voting here in Kendall
February
County.
17th through the 27th is early voting.
And what an opportunity in this county where you can stop in and vote in 3 minutes or less.
Right. Not a long line. Not too difficult. There is some studies that the voter would need to do to make some educated decisions, because there's not just commissioners running
Right.
either. There's Congressional District 21 is up for election. Chippewa is stepping down, and so that's a big race. And then there's a judge's race, which is county-wide, obviously. So there is some homework that the voters would need to do before they get there, but that's about the extent of the time that it would take to go out and vote, right? Going out and actually physically voting, to your point, doesn't take that much time.
So let's dive into you as a candidate, and you're a first-time candidate in this commissioner role. What do you hope to accomplish as commissioner if you're elected?
Great. Yeah. So there's three main priorities that I would like to get accomplished. The first one is implementing a strategic 5-year plan for the county. Currently, the county does not have a strategic plan. And I've taken that from looking at what other governing bodies have implemented and what I believe makes those governing bodies very transparent. And it also sets up, obviously, a roadmap for the future look and feel, and allowing us to really have a goal of protecting our high quality of life here in Kendall County. So that's the first and foremost priority if I was to be elected. 2 is infrastructure, specifically roads and water. And then 3 is public safety, specifically on the fire protection side of public safety.
So let's dive into number 2 on roads and infrastructure. You have, in Precinct 2, you have a lot of growth, and it is a corridor that is working hard to protect its quality of life, its big lot makeup, but you see people coming into that part of our county and trying to put density in. How do you have that conversation with developers, and where do you see that going?
Right. So one of the key things that we can do as a county, as you probably likely know, there's no zoning and planning authority in the county. However, there are things that we can work with the conservation uh, water district, Cow Creek, and and determining lot sizes for wells, which the county has actually done a good job of in taking that from 6 acres to 10 acres. And then there are things that we can do with septic requirements. So to have a septic, you have to have a minimum of an acre. Um, and then we can expand on the lot sizes from there, right? But as in terms of developers coming in and creating their own wastewater or creating their own water, it becomes a lot more difficult, right? So it kind of takes away the control from the county. With that said, if there are other ways that we can provide services as a county, then we could also implement restrictions over those lot sizes. So a good example of that is if we had some type of relationship with a water company, we could regulate then the lot sizes perhaps for a new development that wanted to come in. And instead of drilling wells into the ground, they could use an outside water source. But if we had some say with that water source, we could then dictate those lot sizes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense that the county would look for where can it have control and where can it govern the process of growth. It is a big move for us to go from 6 acre minimums for a well to 10 acres. That shifted how the hill country will develop in a big way. And Cow Creek and Kendall County worked hard on that. You mentioned fire as well, and I think of Precinct 2, and maybe you can describe where Precinct 2 for people in Kendall County, and then the fire safety struggles that are in that region.
Right. So precinct 2 runs from 3351 at the county line. Um, and right there in that area, there's Comel and Bear, and then there's Kendall. And then so 3351 up north. And then everything to the west of 3351, north of Cordillera. It captures all of Cordillera, and then it captures all of River Mountain Ranch, runs down Kreitzberg, and then to 474, and then everything to the east of 474 down, and then around Bentwood area, around Champion Heights. It gets Esperanza, and then it bounces over 46, Champion High School area, Herf Ranch subdivision, ranches at Creekside, down through Ammon, and then captures all of the Fair Oaks city that's in Kendall County. And then there's some outlay down I-10 because that's where our JP office is for Precinct 2. However, I think there's some redrawing of the precinct there, and the JP office is going to move to a different center rather than where it is right now.
It's a big part of the county. It's an important part of the county when you think about the new school that's out in that area, and that's a road and infrastructure conversation. But focusing on fire safety, that area is primarily serviced by a volunteer fire department today in
Bergheim.
Bergheim.
Yeah.
And I know there's been an ongoing conversation out there about ESDs or
Mhm.
other funding mechanisms. How have you interacted with the volunteer fire department in Bergheim?
Yeah, I went to go meet with their board over there. Right now, currently, as I understand it, there has been some funding on a year-to-year basis. I think particularly right now as it stands is there's $500,000 that's been allocated from the county budget to fund Bergheim for a year. With that said, that can be taken away in the next year,
Right.
right? And so particularly in precinct 2, there is a good amount of housing development that's going on in the area. There's existing housing, specifically in Cordillera, and then with George's Ranch coming in. Um, with that said, my understanding for George's Ranch specifically is that the city of Bernie is going to cover that new development. But going back to Bergheim, really what I think needs to be done with Bergheim is that there needs to be a long-term solution to the funding of that particular volunteer fire department. Um, I would say that we probably need to start though looking at the whole county and what are the total fire needs and doing a fire safety study for the whole county and then looking at where we need to put the resources because Kendall County is very different in terms of where we would need the potential fire resources. Like out in Sisterdale, I think the volunteer department out there does a does a great job in terms of being volunteer ran, right? An ESD out there would not make sense at all. And Bergheim, it's a very different area. So does an ESD make sense out there? Does it not? Can we get away with supporting the volunteer department out there every year with a certain amount of money? And does that make sense for the county to fund that out of our budget? Or do we need to look again at an ESD? I will say that an ESD has failed twice, I believe.
Right.
Um, and so there doesn't seem to be a voter appetite at the moment for an ESD. However, with that said, again, I think we need to also consider what is the lay of the land going to look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And how do we prepare for that accordingly?
Now, you come from an entrepreneurial family and an entrepreneurial background. How are you looking at economic development as a county and what Kendall County's looking forward to in the future of jobs and opportunity for residents of Kendall County?
Right, that's right. So you're exactly right. My family owns and operates Texas Star Nut and Food Company and Bernie in the city of Bernie. And we've been in business since 2001, so we're very pro business. Um, with that said, I also grew up off of State Highway 46 East and 2 blocks or 2 houses to the east of where I grew up is now a cement factory there. And so um, it's really not that that was a bad thing per se to have them there, but it's really trying to steer that business development in a way that all residents in Kendall County can get along with, right? I'm very pro business myself. There's a business park off of 46 now across from Pleasant Valley, right? Which I think is great. My son actually does batting practice there, and there's a pizza place that I've yet to been to have attended yet. But when you bring things in like that, there are consequences with traffic, specifically off State Highway 46. So Pleasant Valley, as you probably know, has 2 entrances. And so what do you do in terms of safety when you have a whole influx of traffic now coming in because of those businesses there? So it's just kind of being able to plan right for the fact that there's business coming in. Okay, well now maybe we need to consider another light or something like this off of 46 to really avoid any kind of catastrophic traffic event going into the future. So again, it really goes around planning and what does this look like now that we have new business entering in.
Yeah, unfortunately, 46 has picked up so much traffic and high speed traffic. I would say it's a safety concern often, and there have been many terrible accidents on that road. And it's just a reminder that there is a lot of growth. There's a lot of change to a road that people have been driving for decades. And now you have new friends and neighbors on it moving quickly. And that Pleasant Valley business park is great. It's bringing in revenue, it's bringing in opportunity, it's increasing quality of life, all of those things. But it does go back to that infrastructure conversation of how do you find the balance there? And then for our kids that I want to keep them in Kendall County. I think we export our talent. And when I talk to particularly grandparents, it's a common theme that, oh, how do I get my kids to boomerang back to Kendall County? And so I'm always interested in what are those businesses that are being invited and welcomed to come move into Kendall County? And then what are those businesses that people are growing up? I think of Caden Lane. I think of other businesses out in Precinct 2 that have really been entrepreneurial journeys that come and make a big impact in our county long term.
Of course. Yeah, no, and I'm like I said, a big proponent of driving business in the county for that exact reason. It creates opportunity, right? With that said, though, and I think this is a good thing. It takes Bernie from being, or Kendall County rather, from being a bedroom community to its own sustained type of economy and county, right? And so it allows people to not only live here, but able to work here, right? What that creates the challenge of continuing to maintain that high quality of life. Um, I think it adds to the quality of life. That's my opinion. Again, I'm pro business because if you don't have that here, where will the children want to work or where would they want to thrive? And it's very difficult, especially given the economic situation that we're in right now with inflation and other issues like that, to really retain the young folks to be here in this community. So again, having that business structure, I think, is very important to having a thriving county.
So we have four commissioners and a judge. We have some big elections happening. And to your point earlier, they're in the primary elections. This is where decisions will be made on commissioners moving forward, judges moving forward. And I want to encourage voters to come out for that March 3rd primary election. But let's talk and wrap up around the role of the commissioner. I think there are a lot of conversations and concerns in our community about availability of the county court and ensuring that we're hearing out these conversations, that we're having debate, that we're having strong interlocal relationships with the city of Bernie, with Kerr County, with all of these situations that even in the last year, we've seen those relationships be necessary in catastrophic reasons. And so, how do you look at the interlocal relationship between the county and the city, and then between your peers, commissioners to judge, and how everyone collaborates on what you called a 5-year strategic plan, which is missing in our community today?
Right. I think the strategic plan gives objective, right? It gives an objective for what it is that we want to do in the county, right? And I think it's such a fundamental piece that is currently missing. Um, and we need to continue, we need to have decorum on the court, right? We need to be able to disagree with one another respectfully, if that's the case, and continue to work together, regardless of personal opinion or somebody's feelings. It really needs to be a principled matter, not a personalities matter. But like I said, with planning and finding out what the objective is for the future of the county, I think that would ultimately get us on track to focus on the principles. I have a great relationship with the city of Fair Oaks, which is actually in Kendall, part of it's in Kendall County, and then I have a great relationship with the folks at Bernie. Um, Very important, especially in precinct 2, just because there's such a big part of that the city, both cities being in that precinct, right? And so how do we work together with them? And then especially including TxDOT in those discussions, right? Because yes, 46 is a state road, 3351 is a state road, but there are things that we can be doing to make sure that we're getting the infrastructure needs out of TxDOT for the county as a whole, right? And so it's maintaining those relationships, really, in building those relationships, with the ultimate goal, right, of continuing to protect our high quality of life and getting those services that ultimately we need today and into the future.
Well, JC Taylor, it's been a pleasure to sit down and cover a number of topics with you. Where can voters find more information about you, your campaign, and get involved?
Okay, so votejctaylor.com is the website, and then you'll be able to find the Facebook link. My phone number's on there. feel free to give me a call, send me an email. My email is also on my webpage, and very accessible through the website. And again, all of my other contact information will be found at votejctaylor.com.
Well, it's great to see the signs out, see you and your family out campaigning and sharing the message of what you want to accomplish in Kendall County. And then again, just reminders to our neighbors that they need to come out and vote March 3rd and take advantage of early voting, February 17th. And it is a 5-minute task to actually vote. But do the research, get to know your candidates. And JC, we appreciate you sitting down with us today and letting us get to know you in this way.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Vote Like a Texan. Please remember to like and subscribe and check out votelikeatexan.com.